Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys are all doing well. In this Diablo 4 video, we're going to be going over the Stormwolf build. This is going to be able to pump out damage in melee, as well as excelling in your ranged options as well. And really quick, before we get started, I just wanted to thank everyone that has been subscribed to this channel, and any newcomers along the way.
Thank you!
Because I really do appreciate your time and the fact that you are a part of this channel. And for anybody new stopping by, my name is Chris, and thank you so much for clicking on this video. Let's get into it. So let's talk a bit about how your gameplay is going to be playing out. So first thing we're going to be doing is when we enter a pack of mobs, we're going to be using rabies to immediately affect our poison. Then it's your choice to drag this enemy around the whole dungeon, or gather up as many enemies as you feel comfortable with, letting that rabies spread around to everything to get that critical strike bonus. Once everything's nicely grouped up, we're going to go ahead and use Poison Creeper, gaining an additional critical strike chance as they're rooted, and then it's going to be time to go to town with either using your ultimate ability Lacerate or unleashing your previously preserved Lightning Storm, and make some distance between yourself and the enemies. And I would go ahead and dump about half your spirit pool right on those enemies right away. Halfway in, I would go with Blood Howl, as that will replenish any health you may have lost while gathering around your enemies, as well as refill some of that spirit you just spent on the initial Lightning Storm. The reason why we're going to use this halfway through your Lightning Storm already is so that we don't overcap on the health, we don't overcap on spirit generation. You get to consume both of those aspects of this spell, as well as gaining an additional 20% critical strike chance from the legendary we'll be rocking that we're going to be talking about later on in this video. You're going to be using Storm Strike as filler, and for whatever's left over, it's your choice to either use that Lacerate spell to finish off everything else, or use it for a sticky situation, since it gives you a nice 5 to 7 second immunity, leaving that as more of a case-by-case basis if you would like to use it or not. I tended to use this ability as more of an oh shit button to get me out of any sticky situation, because Lightning Storm handles 9 out of 10 of the encounters. And while keeping this whole rotation in mind, the main thing here is to always re-prime your Lightning Storm throughout the dungeon so that you don't lose that full Lightning Storm damage that you have built up. There's going to be a little countdown there, and after 6 seconds, it starts all over again to that single lightning bolt. So even if there's no enemies in front of you, feel free to cast that spell, and it's going to reset the lightning storm so that this way it never drops back off to that single lightning bolt. I feel like this was a nice little mid-max for us to keep an eye on, giving my brain always something to think about and making this build very engaging. So now that we know how this build's going to play out, let's get into the meat here and discuss everything we're using and what I recommend with this build. So starting off with Storm Strike, I wish the other abilities were more up to par, but due to the fact that this ability is giving you 25% damage reduction, 25% increased lucky hit chance, immobilizes the target, and gives them vulnerable, this spell is going to give you everything you need in one swoop. Next up is going to be Lightning Storm, and this being your ranged option, this is going to allow you to sit back, and it's going to increase its damage per strike the longer that it's channeled. Once you head into the next node though, Enhanced Lightning Storm, this is going to preserve your Lightning Storm for the next 6 seconds after it's channeled. And this is what's key about this ability, is that you're able to keep this at its full potential as you're going throughout the dungeon. Even if there's no mobs in front of you and you have a little bit of spirit left over, you could just click that button once to reset the Enhanced Lightning Storm, and you'll continue to have a fully sized storm at your fingertips. And by the way, if you're getting any value out of this, feel free to hit that like button for me. It lets me know that you guys have been enjoying this video and maybe potentially trying these builds out for yourself. Moving down to the tree one more node, we're gaining Raging Lightning Storm, just increasing the additional lightning strike by 1. And a little side note, this only costs 15 spirit per strike, so it's very spirit efficient, which is a nice change for the druid. Next up, we're going to be going with Poison Creeper, which in my opinion is the best CC option we have in our arsenal. We're going to be going down this tree to get Enhanced Poison Creeper to increase the mobilization by 1 second, as well as Brutal Poison Creeper, increasing the critical strike chance by 20% against poison targets. This is where a lot of our base critical strike damage is going to start stacking up from this spell here, because moving on, we're going to also be taking rabies, which is going to be applying that poison damage over 6 seconds, and going down the tree, we're going to make it so it spreads 100% faster. This way you can grab a group of mobs and drag them around the dungeon, applying an additional critical strike chance. And that's leading us into the node Neurotoxin, where poison enemies are slowed by 8%, but not only that, poison enemies are also going to be taking 30% additional critical strike damage. So already with these two nodes, not talking about any gear or legendaries as of yet, everything poisoned is going to have an increased critical strike damage of 30%, as well as an additional 20% when you entangle them in the roots. So those two spells applying poison is going to be synergizing very well with each other. Moving on from that, we're going to be taking Lacerate as our ultimate ability. This wasn't the strongest ultimate that I've dealt with so far, but it was a lot of fun to use and has some very unique utility purposes, and we're going to talk about how to make this stronger here in just a second. But we're going to go down the tree to Primal Lacerate, and this makes it so every time Lacerate critical strikes, you're going to get a heal for 3% of your maximum health. A nice bit of utility. And then Supreme Lacerate is going to make it so that the initial strike is guaranteed to critical strike and deal 150% increased damage. Now, what I was talking about before, to bump this damage up a little bit, I would definitely go back to the cluster of nodes where Neurotoxin is and dump a few points at the Toxic Claws, which makes it so that critical strikes with werewolf skills deal 23% of the base damage as poison damage over 4 seconds. So since everything is poisoned all the time, from not only Poison Creeper and you dragging mobs around with rabies, you're going to get an extra damage bonus when using Lacerate. And the final bit of utility here is the fact that when you use this ability, you're going to become immune for about 5 seconds. So if you know the boss encounter that you're about to walk into has an insane ability coming up, you know you're always safe to hold this ultimate for a quick and easy way out. So it does decent damage, brings unique utility, and gives you a safe oh shit button in case you need it. And next up, we're going to be taking Perfect Storm, making it so that every storm skill that you cast grants 1 additional spirit and deals 15% increased damage when damaging a vulnerable, immobilized, or slow enemy. And our base Storm Strike's going to be dealing vulnerable. It's going to have an opportunity to immobilize. Back to Poison Creeper. This is going to be immobilizing targets as well, also poisoning the enemies. And because we took Neurotoxin, any poisoned enemies are going to be slowed by 8%, so we're pretty much always going to have a slow on them, and that's not even considered rabies, which is going to be resetting the cooldown of that poison. We're going to have a lot of base skills really working hand in hand with each other here in this build. Switching things up to our defensives, we're going to go ahead and stick with Bloodhowl. This is going to be giving you another on-demand heal. Further down the tree, though, we're going to go with Enhanced Bloodhowl, making it so any kills are going to be reducing the cooldown by 1 second, so when you have a mob of low health enemies, you're going to be resetting this left and right. And last but not least, what's most important to me, especially in the beginning stages of this game, is going to be innate Bloodhowl, generating 20 spirit every time you use the ability. So I'm an absolute huge fan of Bloodhowl. It gives a nice fluid rotation, just being able to use it to fill up health and spirit, which then allows you to cause more damage, to kill more enemies, which is bringing down the cooldown further, so that this way you can heal again and gather more spirit. Very well put together spell there, I must say. Let's talk about a few passives that are absolutely key for this build, starting off with Heart of the Wild. This is going to increase your maximum spirit by 9, and since Lightning Storm is only 15 spirit per cast, this works very well with this druid build, and druids in the beginning levels of this game are fiending for spirit anyways, so this is always a winner. We're also going to have Abundance, where basic skills generate 18% more spirit, so you don't want to be using Storm Strike that often. You mainly just want to use that to build a spirit, so why not use it less by increasing how much spirit you're gaining. I would also highly recommend Nature's Reach, as this deals 9% increased damage to distant enemies, and double this bonus if they're slowed, stunned, immobilized, or knocked back, which we have an absolute abundance of all of that. You should also be taking Clarity, gaining 6 spirit when transforming into human form. And then the main cluster of nodes that you want to focus on is Elemental Exposure. I suggest putting 1 point into the beginning node just to start the chain to get to the further nodes. I would go straight to Charged Atmosphere, as every 18 seconds a lightning bolt hits the nearby enemy, dealing 45 damage. It's a nice passive damage bonus. I would look to max this out, but hold off. The next most important one would be Electric Shock. Dealing lightning damage to enemies has a 15% chance to immobilize them for 3 seconds, and if they're already immobilized, the lightning damage dealt is increased by 18% instead. This I would definitely look to max out, as this is going to end up just chunking enemies, and we're doing lightning damage 90% of the time. But most importantly is Bad Omen, having up to a 30% chance when dealing damage to a vulnerable, immobilized, or stunned enemy that a lightning bolt also hits, dealing 55% damage. This is the key talent to take away from this, so if you don't have a lot of talent points, no matter where you're sitting right now, Bad Omen is definitely the way to go. But that entire cluster there is fire. Next passive is Defiance, making nature magic skills deal 12% increased damage to elites. So let's talk about some of the legendary aspects to go after, and then we'll get into some passive stats to round out the build. The first one that works extremely well with this build is going to be the aspect of nature savagery, making it so that the werewolf skills function as storm skills. So this way, no matter which way you're trying to increase your damage potential, whether that's the physical of your werewolf or the ranged storm skills, they're all going to be sitting in the same bucket of damage increases. So if you have this one in your inventory, congratulations, this is going to be a banger for you. Moving on from that, we have the lightning dancer aspect, making it so that lightning storm critical strikes spawn dancing bolts that seek out enemies in the area, dealing additional lightning damage. This is another nice additive if you happen to have it. It's not going to make or break the build though. Just some extra passive damage that you can't go wrong with anyways. Another goodie is going to be the Night Howlers aspect. This is going to allow for Bloodhowl to increase your critical strike chance for you, and you can get this specific aspect in the Forbidden City and the Fractured Peaks. We're also going to have the Overcharged aspect, which has a chance when dealing lightning damage to overload the target, causing any direct damage you deal to them to pulse for additional damage surrounding enemies. So with Lightning Storm giving you great potential AoE, this is just solidifying that ability to be more reliable in those AoE situations. But in my opinion, these last two aspects are absolutely needed for this build, and that's going to be aspect of the Inner Calm, which deals increased damage for each second that you stand still up to 30%. And with this specific build with Lightning Storm, you're going to want to be standing still because this is going to be one of your most powerful moves. And on top of that, the longer you cast this ability, the more strikes come out, the more damage you do. But the main aspect that you should be looking for this build is going to be the protecting aspect, making it so that when hit, while not healthy, a magical bubble is summoned around you for approximately several seconds, whatever that means. But while standing in that bubble, you're going to be completely immune, and this is going to allow you to fully charge your Lightning Storm, not take any damage while you're standing still, giving you more uptime on it. It's going to help you in this build in every way, shape, or form, so I couldn't stress this enough. Pick this up as soon as you can. And by the way, quick question to you guys. What builds are you running right now? What are you guys finding most fun? I'm thinking about starting either a sorcerer or a rogue next. They're looking like a blast. But definitely leave it down in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. So let's get into our stats a little bit to round out this build. We're always going to want critical strike chance and critical damage. Vulnerable damage is always key. Look for damage versus crowd controlled enemies. Damage with poison and damage with distance enemies are always going to be absolute bangers in this build as well. I would also look for any cooldown reduction gear, as that's going to increase the amount of times you'll be able to use your ultimate Lacerate, which makes it so that you're going to be able to become immune more often. This is also going to cycle you through your Blood Howls more often, giving you more spirit generation, as well as your Poison Creeper, as that's one of your cooldowns as well. Moving on from that, let's talk about some of the spirit boons that are going to synergize very well with this build, starting off with Gift of the Stag. This is increasing your maximum spirit by 10. More spirit, more lightning. Win-win. I also recommend you taking wariness depending on how deep you are in the game when creating this build. Taking 10% reduced damage from elites is definitely something I would highly consider moving into World Tier 3 or 4. Moving on to the Eagle, I would take Avian Wrath, gaining additional 30% critical strike damage on top of everything else we got going on. For the Wolf, you have some variety to go through. I choose to go with Calamity, extending the duration of our ultimate skill by 25%, which is going to increase the amount that you're going to be getting healed by Lacerate, because you're going to be in it for a little bit longer, striking more times, gaining health back, as well as increasing the immunity time that you have. And then Energize is always a winner in my book. Dealing damage has a 15% chance to restore 10 spirit. For the Snake, you have two options as well. I went with Calm Before the Storm, as nature magic skills have a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate skill by 2 seconds, again putting us back into Lacerate, giving us that safety and an extra heal more often. And then you also have Overload. Dealing lightning damage has a 20% chance to cause a target to emit a static discharge, dealing 20% of its initial damage to all surrounding enemies, and really solidifying that Lightning Storm as a solid AoE in this build. So I'm sure there's plenty of things here you guys can switch around to min-max. I mainly focus on creating a thematic and fun build that'll leave you with very little resistance going through the world of Diablo to come. So on that note, I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to hit that like button for me, subscribe if you'd like to, and I will see you in the next video. Take it easy, guys.